You have 14 days to move your boat or face daily fines. That's what the letter said. A bright red warning from the HOA stuffed into my mailbox like some cheap threat. But what they didn't know was that I'd been waiting for this moment for years. They walked straight into the trap. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. Let me take you back to the beginning. 2 years ago, I finally bought my dream home. Not just any house. This one came with direct access to the water. A cozy dock, beautiful sunsets, and best of all, a spot to park my boat right in my backyard. I had worked my whole life for that. And when I found a waterfront property with a deed that specifically guaranteed docking rights, I jumped on it. The deed clearly stated, the homeowner shall retain full rights to maintain a boat on the dock adjacent to the property. Sounds ironclad, right? That was until the HOA changed leadership. 6 months after I moved in, the HOA got a new president. Let's call her Karen. You already know the type. Clipboard in hand. Always scowling. Believes the neighborhood is her personal kingdom. She made it her mission to clean up the waterfront, and decided that boats made the neighborhood look cluttered. Never mind that half of us bought homes here because of the water access. She sent out a newsletter with a new policy. No boats can be stored on docks behind residential homes. All watercraft must be stored off-site. I laughed at first. Surely this didn't apply to me. I had a deed. A legal document. But then came the letter. Dear homeowner, you are in violation of new HOA Regulation 14B. Please remove your boat within 14 days or face a $100 daily fine. I was furious. But I wasn't surprised. I knew this might happen one day. And I was ready. I attended the next HOA meeting. Sat there quietly while Karen went over her beautification plans. When it was my turn to speak, I calmly slid a copy of my deed across the table. This property includes waterfront docking rights. You can't override that with an HOA vote. You're welcome to double-check with your attorney. Karen smirked. Well, we'll see about that. Oh, she'd see all right. A week later, I got another letter. This one was more aggressive. Failure to comply will result in a lien being placed on your property. Now they were trying to play dirty. So, I called my attorney. He reviewed the documents, then chuckled and said, they don't have a leg to stand on. If they push this, we could sue for damages, and probably win. But I had something even better than a lawsuit. Leverage. See, when I bought the house, I had spent extra time reviewing the original developer documents. Back when this neighborhood was first built, the developer had carved out the waterfront lots and given them special rights, not just in the deeds, but also in the neighborhood charter. In fact, the HOA wasn't allowed to make any rules affecting dock usage without unanimous consent from all waterfront homeowners. I knew for a fact Karen didn't get that consent. And I wasn't the only one with a boat. I made a few calls. 5 other waterfront owners were just as angry as I was. We all pulled our deeds. All had the same clause. And none of us were moving our boats. The next HOA meeting was packed. Karen marched in with a stack of violation letters like she was ready to go to war. Then one of the other owners, a retired lawyer, stood up and handed her a cease and desist letter on behalf of all of us. She went pale. You've overstepped your authority, he said calmly. The HOA cannot enforce rules that contradict individual property deeds. Furthermore, we have evidence that no vote was held among the waterfront property owners, a legal requirement according to the original neighborhood charter. And then came the final blow. If you proceed, we will file for an injunction, and you personally could be liable for damages due to the misrepresentation of HOA authority. Karen didn't say a word. She just gathered her papers and left. The next week, we received a new newsletter. After further review, the HOA has decided not to pursue enforcement of Rule 14B regarding boat storage. We apologize for any confusion. Oh, we weren't confused. They just realized they'd walked straight into a legal buzzsaw. That was the last we heard about it. My boat's still there, floating peacefully on the dock behind my house. And Karen? She resigned a few months later. Apparently, She moved to a different neighborhood, one without a lake. Here's the thing, HOAs can be useful. When they function properly, they help keep neighborhoods clean, safe, and looking nice. They manage shared spaces, organize events, and sometimes even increase property values by maintaining standards across the community. That's all great, in theory. But the problem isn't what HOAs are supposed to do. The problem is what happens when a few power-hungry people get control and forget the limits of that power. That's when things go off the rails. Sometimes, these boards overreach. Badly. They start treating the HOA like a personal empire instead of a community. They assume they can write a rule, print it in the newsletter, and everyone just has to obey, no questions asked. But here's what they forget. Backhand index pointing right homeowners still have rights. Backhand index pointing right property deeds are legal contracts. Backhand index pointing right and HOA rules don't magically override the law. In fact, when it comes down to it, your deed and your property title are stronger than anything your HOA prints on a piece of paper. If the HOA tries to enforce something that directly contradicts your legal rights as a property owner, they're not just overstepping, they might be breaking the law. But most people don't know that. And some HOAs count on that. They count on homeowners being too intimidated or uninformed to fight back. They count on people just rolling over and complying, even when the rule is completely bogus. But let me tell you, knowledge is power. Especially when you're dealing with people who are bluffing. So, here's my advice to every homeowner living under an HOA. White heavy check mark, read your deed. Seriously. It's not just a formality, it's a legal document that spells out your rights. If you bought a property with specific features or easements, like water access, driveway rights, or exterior privileges, that stuff matters. HOAs can't just erase it with a new vote. White heavy check mark, know your HOA's charter and bylaws. Every HOA has to operate under certain rules. Many have limits on what they can and can't do, and some require unanimous votes for major changes. If they didn't follow the process, their new rule may be completely invalid. White heavy check mark, don't be afraid to stand your ground. You don't need to be a lawyer to push back. Sometimes, just showing them you know your rights is enough to make them back off. And if they don't, get a real lawyer involved. You might be surprised how quickly they fold. At the end of the day, standing up for yourself doesn't always mean going to court or starting a war. Sometimes, the best revenge is just letting them hang themselves with their own rules. Because when you know the game better than the people trying to play you, you win. Every time.